Kuzangpo, and a very warm welcome to the English segment of the Current Affairs program. And today we are bringing out this program coinciding with the UN Day, which is observed on 24th of October. For information of the viewers, the United Nations has been in Bhutan for the past 40 years. Since then, they have been supporting the government in delivering the national development needs and in improving the socio-economic conditions of the people of Bhutan. And to talk about the UN agencies in Bhutan, now we are joined by Mr. Gerard Delit, the resident coordinator of United Nations Bhutan, Ms. Azusa Kubuta, the resident representative of UNDP, and Mr. Swante Helms, the head of office, WFP, and Dr. Wilparks, the representative from UNICEF. And to Dr. Wilparks, welcome to Bhutan. I believe you are here very recently. Now, to start off with, first of all, to Mr. Gerard Dalila. Now, how is the UN in Bhutan working together in achieving the SDGs?
Before I start to answer this question, let me just start off by saying I want to take the opportunity to thank yourself, Sherab, and BBS for inviting the United Nations to present some of the work that they're doing. As you can imagine, there's 26 United Nations agencies working in Bhutan. So it'll be a bit of a challenge to cover everything we do this evening, but we are always open and transparent with all the work we're doing. So in terms of the work we're doing, and I would focus on about three things. First of all, Semda no Samtingo. As much as possible, the work of the United Nations, we need to be coming at it from a mind and heart perspective. And a very good example of this is leaving no one behind. Always thinking about the most vulnerable in society and what we can do for them. Given that this is the land of gross national happiness, makes a lot of sense to the United Nations. And I know to the Royal Government of Bhutan and to His Majesty that we support the most vulnerable. Secondly, we are here as visitors, as supporters of the Royal Government of Bhutan and His Majesty. So as much as possible, the work we do in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals, which are outlined here, is fully in line with the 12th plan. And the third element that I would focus on in this first round of questions is the need for innovation. We know we're helping this country prepare for LDC graduation, but in fact, I much prefer the term self-reliance. So in all the areas we possibly can, we need to be focused on self-reliance. So I'm joined today by I'll give you three examples from the work of these three agencies. UNDP's electric vehicles project is an incredible project. We're bringing in 300 electric vehicles, and UNDP can explain this in more detail if you're interested. We're going to reduce pollution, we're going to reduce expensive imports of fuels, and we're going to strengthen the Bhutanese private sector, especially the taxis association. So ordinary people and their work lives. In terms of the World Food Programme, they're doing very innovative work around food fortification, which means that in terms of strengthening rice fortification, people will be able to have access to minerals and vitamins at very cost-efficient prices. And finally, the work of UNICEF, and this is just one example I'm citing from across these three agencies, is the work that they're doing in ECCD, early childcare. We know that for every dollar that is invested in ECCD, you get a return on investment of $16. Well, how can you go wrong with that type of thinking? So all of these examples go to the heart of building self-reliance. And I hope that this will continue to be the forte of not just these three UN agencies, but the other 23 who we may not get the chance to talk about today, but who are all doing great work. And I can assure you that we are always trying to do an even better job. And whenever any of the listeners who are listening here tonight to our program, whenever any of you have anything you want to say to help the United Nations do an even better job, please do not be shy and give us that feedback, because we know at the United Nations, strong feedback is right at the heart of strengthening our results and showing our commitment to being accountable to the people of this country and to the government and to His Majesty.
Thank you. Ms. Azusa, if you could share what UNDP is doing in order to, what are your areas of focus now?
Thank you very much. As the UN's development program, we are well placed to provide an integrated solution and to bring all the partners together across the UN agencies, but from the government side. One such example is our support to royal government in establishing the SDG dashboard. As you know, we only have 11 years to go until 2030. Some people may say it's a lot of time, but the recent high-level meeting highlighted that there's a lot of work to do globally. And Honorable Prime Minister also said at the side of the General Assembly meeting that Bhutan wishes to achieve all the SDGs ahead of 2030. This means that we need to have evidence base and invest in areas, programs and policies where progress can be made in a concrete way. Therefore, we are working with Gross National Happiness Commission, National Statistics Bureau, and other agencies in establishing an online platform to be able to monitor progress against selected prioritized SDG indicators. And we're doing that together with other UN agencies with specialized technical expertise as the UN family. Another example is the area of climate adaptation and mitigation. As you know, Bhutan is one of the few carbon neutral countries, in fact, carbon negative country. But maintaining this status requires sustained investment. And this has been our repeated message to the global community. And we have been working hand in hand with the government to access global climate financing. We're working with the government in providing technologies to adapt to climate change impact in the agriculture sector, making irrigation systems climate-proof, and also providing climate-proof seeds and so forth. We are very happy that we're able to support the government in accessing the 25 million envelope from the Green Climate Fund. This will allow us to scale up our support to 8 ZONCACs. And as Jerry has already mentioned, we're working in the mitigation sector as well. At the end of the project of the electric vehicle project, we hope to introduce 300 electric vehicles in the taxi sector, transportation sector. And this is an idea that the government and other partners are picking up in the wider transportation sector.
Okay, Mr. Sonti, if you could share about your areas of work now.
Thank you. So WFP has changed quite substantially from how it's used to be known here in Bhutan. So with the new WFP, our new plan, we have left behind what we call direct implementation and provision of school meals, and we're now focusing on 4 areas. So the first area is how we best can help Bhutan's readiness for disasters and climate change. Second one is how we can help improve the nutrition and health of Bhutan's 170,000 school children. Third area is support agriculture and production of local and nutritious food, maintaining the quality of food, and also reducing the cost of the national food supply chain. And the fourth area is to help introduce innovations and technology to, on one hand, reduce the costs of national programs and services, and on the other hand, increase human capital. On disaster management, we know that disasters are increasing in terms of frequency and severity. We also know that Bhutan is the second most at-risk area for earthquakes along the whole Himalayan arc that goes from Pakistan and all the way to China. And we also know that, for example, glacial lakes are increasingly bursting, as we saw earlier this year up near Lake Tortomi. So with these increased risk factors, WFP's one of our focus areas is really to help the government across a range of areas on disaster risk management. So one is to help improve the overall coordination among agencies, both in government and the development partners, help build national disaster management capacity. Secondly, we are looking at improving data preparedness for disasters through, among others, digitization. We're also working on strengthening logistic capacity to prepare for and respond to disasters, and also help improve the emergency telecommunication and food security before and after. And we do this in a very strong coalition with government partners such as DDM, Department for Disaster Management. We work closely with UNDP and UNICEF, and we work closely with the World Bank and JICA, and also with research institutions such as Newcastle University and Durham University.
Okay. Dr. Will, if you could share about your areas of focus, UNICEF.
Thank you so much, and I echo Jerry's appreciation of this opportunity, and it's great to be here, and thank you also for the personal welcome. Maybe I could just illustrate 3 areas where UNICEF is working very closely with other UN agencies to support the royal government of Bhutan. The first area related to children and adults living with disabilities, and it's here that UNICEF, together with UNDP and the World Health Organization, are supporting the government's efforts to provide a more enabling environment for children and adults with disabilities. We have been helping civil society organizations that have a focus on disability, providing them with some disability equality training, the aim of which is to ensure that people with disabilities get a fair and equal chance to attend education and pursue employment opportunities. And a really innovative approach that we've adopted here is to ensure that the training is carried out by people with disabilities themselves. If I may just pick up on what Jerry said in terms of early childhood development, and stress that this is a really important investment area. And as the United Nations family, we're delighted to see that the government of Bhutan, supported by His Majesty, has really focused on the early years of children's lives. The Minister of Health herself has come up with I consider a groundbreaking initiative to accelerate mother and children's health. And this is a comprehensive package of health and cognitive development interventions, everything that a child needs from the moment of conception through to the end of his or her second year of life. Combined with the interventions that focus on antenatal and postnatal care and nutrition for adolescent girls and pregnant women, this initiative on the early years of life is bringing together the work of UNICEF, the World Health Organization, UNFPA, UNAIDS, FAO, and the World Food Programme. We talk about this as the first golden 1,000 days of life. And I want to take a moment here to stress and underline the importance of what the government is doing here. Those first 1,000 days of life, coupled with funding and delivering quality early childhood care and development, has been proven scientifically throughout the world to be one of the best investments society can make for prosperity and sustainability and peace. They're also the most wise choices economists can make when investing national budgets in the early years of life. Strong investments in children's lives in those first few years contributes enormously to the gross national happiness index. It can accelerate many of the results in the government's 12th five-year plan, and it contributes to all, and I repeat, all of the SDGs. That's why we call the first 1,000 days of life golden. The third and final example I just want to focus on is the work we're doing across the United Nations to help adolescents and young people in Bhutan. The challenges they face are very, very complex. So it come at no surprise that we have a whole range of United Nations agencies, civil society and government organizations trying to solve the problems of young people, involving young people themselves in seeking solutions. And as you might know, the UNICEF has been involved in non-formal education programs for many, many years, but we're delighted now and very proud to be one of the many partners helping in seek innovative employment opportunities for young people. An example of that is we've established, together with the Ministry of Education, 4 integrated adolescent and youth-friendly service centres around the country, which are providing young people with opportunities for psychosocial support, health support and employment training opportunities.
Okay, Mr. Gerard. Now, Bhutan plans to meet the target prior to 2030. So do you think it's an ambitious plan, and do you think Bhutan is on track in meeting it before the global target?
Well, I would wholly agree with the Prime Minister luncheon when he was in New York recently, when he spoke to the importance of this question, and I concur 100% with him that we are very much on track. In fact, we are one of the few countries where at a values level we are not only fully aligned with the SDGs, but we actually, in some respects, especially around culture and tradition, we go beyond the SDGs. And it is in that regard that I just wanted to mention that let me take the opportunity to single out the fact that the partnerships that the United Nations, the 26 UN agencies working in Bhutan, we depend so much on so many partners, not just the ministries, not just the various institutions, such as NSB, NCWC, the CSOs. We could not do the work we're doing unless we were doing great partnering with all of these great entities. And I want to take the opportunity to just emphasize something that you mentioned. In your opening, you spoke about how we've been here helping the Royal Government of Bhutan and His Majesty for the last 48 years. Well, of course, we're coming up on the 50th anniversary, and we don't just want to celebrate 50 years in Bhutan. We want to celebrate the results we're achieving for this country. And we know that we're not able to do this unless we continue to have these great partnerships. And I am so grateful to all those different institutions that work for us day in, day out, helping the United Nations, help the Royal Government of Bhutan and its people.
Okay, Mr. Aziza, if you could share to meet the global target by 2030, what are the challenges that you all face and foresee? I'm sure challenges must be plenty as well.
Thank you. I like to see them as opportunities. At the last roundtable meeting, the Royal Government of Bhutan has made a very concrete pledge of shifting the focus from aid to trade. And this speaks to the point Jerry made about self-reliance. And obviously, the aid architecture is changing. The resource envelope is changing. And therefore, it's important for the government to have a menu of options for financing SDGs and obviously the 5-year plan. We see the UN's role is helping the government invest resources in the right areas with data and evidence, but also help the government in finding out the alternative options, innovative ways to finance SDGs. In this regard, UN agencies and non-resident agencies that are not based here, but from Bangkok, Geneva, New York, providing technical assistance. And some of the examples would include bonds, tax reform, and so forth. And I think increasingly UN should be focusing on innovative financing as opposed to just bringing in new resources. But how do you utilize existing resources with efficiency and a greater precision to achieving results?
Okay, so Mr. Sonti, now when it's talk about finding innovative ideas, if you could cite some examples and if you could talk about what are some of the innovative ideas that the UN is looking into.
Thank you. I would like to respond to this question from two angles. Mm-hmm. First of all, I think we need to recognize that we are in what is called as the fourth industrial revolution, which probably will change the landscape in which we operate in most of the areas that we're working in, whether it's transport or it's logistics or it's agriculture or it's nutrition or it's disaster management. I think innovations and technology are increasing important factor for a country's competitiveness, mm-hmm. but also its ability to reach the last mile. And I think if we should help the government in narrowing the gap and reduce inequalities, we also need to look at how we can help narrowing the technology gap as an important factor in this equation. So we, as the UN family, has a range of innovations that we are bringing into the country. I can mention a couple of those that we are developing with government agencies. So one of them is called the menu optimizer, which is a way to increase the nutrient value of meals while also supporting local agricultural development. So the menu optimizer is a platform that helps us design nutritious meals based on local food where possible and at a minimum cost. So it's basically an online platform with 3,400 types of food with a nutrient profile and costs. And we combine this with mapping of what food is available at different parts of the country in different seasons. So in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, we hope to see this help us substitute some of the imported food and instead add more local food that is nutritious and that helps both supporting school children's health and nutrition, but also support local farmers.
Oh, okay, Dr. Wills, if you want to add on.
Well, perhaps, Gerard, I would just add a couple of examples of innovation that UNICEF, together with other agencies, has brought to the country in recent years. We talked earlier about the importance of investing in the early years of life, and for many children in particularly remote areas of the country, it's very difficult to get that exposure to pre-primary education. So getting into an early childhood care development centre is extremely difficult for parents to enable their children to get there. Many hours of walking is required, and parents are very, very busy with their own work to make sure they have income. So one of the models that UNICEF, together with the Ministry of Education, has been working on is to have mobile, on foot or other transport, early childhood care development facilitators from the local areas who are trained to deliver a classroom experience to preschool children in their villages. And this requires the facilitators to walk for many hours every day, but we have extraordinarily committed young Bhutanese ECCD facilitators, and this could be a breakthrough model to allow all children throughout the country to get exposure to this preschool education. I mentioned the adolescent integrated services as another innovation area that we're helping the government with, and this is really a one-stop shop for the most vulnerable adolescents and youth in urban areas in particular to gain access to a whole suite of different services. But I think a really interesting innovation that has been brought to for the first time to Bhutan and was launched last month by the Minister of Health herself is micronutrient sprinkles. And this is for very early childhood nutrition, all the vital nutrients and vitamins that a child needs, that is in a package that is delivered to health workers who then give education to parents, and they sprinkle this on their food when the child has finished breastfeeding or after 6 months. And this, we hope, will be a revolutionary intervention to help prevent stunting, which is a major problem in some parts of the country. Of course, we're working with our colleagues in the World Food Programme and across the government to make sure that we don't rely on sprinkles, but we further diversify the types of food that young children are given. So this is only a stopgap measure, but it's the first time that Bhutan and amongst the region, it's one of the few countries that's launched this sprinkles program to help stop stunting.
Okay, do you want to add on this, the innovative ideas when?
Well, thanks again, Sherab. Let me just spend a little bit of time talking about UN House. So let me remind all your listeners that once a month, the second Thursday of the month, we open up UN House for anybody who's interested in coming over and listening to some great conversations on what is called Bhutan Dialogues. And when you come to UN House, ask us about what we're doing so that we are efficient with the use of the electricity that's available. Ask questions about what we are doing so that we are only using single source plastics. We'll also share with you the ideas around our own fleet of electric vehicles, which we want to increase over time. Our use of solar panels. So we want UN House to be a role model for all the buildings that wish to be that little bit extra innovative. So that for me is an important element. A second important element is the relationship we have with the CSOs. Last week I was in Samdrup Junker, and I was so impressed with the relationship that's going on between the Samdrup Junker Initiative and the Zongda, with the support of the United Nations. And the essence of this innovation, it's not one of these fancy, extra innovative. It's just doing the bread and butter partnership. Bread and butter partnership can also be considered a form of partnering. And the other element that I want to talk about is, we all know that rural-urban migration is one of our bigger challenges. Somebody from Bhutan, you know what I'm talking about. This is also a big challenge for any of the Zonkas and Zongdas who are dealing with Gungtangs. So we, the United Nations, we have to be thinking about what can we do in our projects so that we can help those people who want to stay in the remote parts of the country to have a living that sustains them and gives them a good lifestyle. But also, those that do come to Thimphu and Paro, how do we help them adapt? And for example, UNDP has a very innovative project which is supported by UNFPA and some other UNICEF and other UN agencies to help on gender-based violence. We haven't talked much about that today, but these are all elements of what I call practical innovation. So innovation essentially is a spectrum. It's bread and butter, and then as we go forward, we become more and more and more innovative. And that's exactly what we need for the 21st century. This is 2019. So the more we are helping this country to be innovative with its existing resources, building self-reliance, the more we're going to be ready for whatever the future brings for this great country.
Okay, since we just have last 5 minutes, maybe two guest speakers could talk about, one could talk about what would be the biggest achievement of UN for the past 48 years, and if other one could talk what UN has to offer to Bhutan in the future. So any two speakers.
I just want to add to the innovation part because this is the future and the present. I think the governments we work in the region, certainly Royal Government of Bhutan, are becoming more mature and sophisticated in their thinking and in their ability to reach out for center of excellence in the world. So UN has to be ahead of the game. We have to be ahead of the government. For that, sometimes our existing program and project structures take too much time, too long, not agile enough to respond. So UNDP, for example, is spearheading an innovation lab, SDG accelerator lab. It's a virtual lab, but aside from the conventional projects and programs, we like to have a platform where we can quickly respond to the government by applying government's requests, by applying some of the techniques such as systems mapping, design thinking, foresight. And we're doing this together with other UN agencies such as UNICEF in looking at youth unemployment as the first challenge. So as we speak today during the Entrepreneurship Festival Week, today and tomorrow we are doing systems mapping for youth unemployment. We have to now look into changing the systems, not tinkering around here and there through one-time, one-off activities, which would not yield sustainable results. So I think fundamentally we have to change the way we do our business and we respond to emerging requests from the government, but also from communities and civil society.
Okay, thank you. Last 1 minute.
Yeah, thanks a lot. No, I would like to continue here along the line of UNDP because I think innovations, technology, new ways of doing things are essential for us and especially for the UN's role here. And I'll give you an example that I saw the other day. If we look at Amazon, the American company Amazon, in 2017 their revenue was $3 billion, and in 2018 their revenue was $10 billion. So that is about 4 times the GDP, the gross national product of Bhutan. And it tells us a story of the power, I think, of technology, of data processing and artificial intelligence. So I think one of the key roles of the UN in helping Bhutan accelerating and achieving the SDGs is to transfer technology and transfer best technology from other countries through our global network and make sure that it works here in Bhutan.
Thank you so much. With the time limit, we'll have to cut the program here, but we look forward in having more discussions of this kind. And maybe we could invite each one of you and have an elaborate program in the future. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you all the viewers for watching.